All right. How's everybody doing this week? That weekend, I should say. All right. So, week 8. And so we are at the conclusion of this particular session and of this class. So, congratulations for, uh, you know, 7, 8 weeks of hard work. Let's finish up strong. Okay. So, don't forget, got um, the final exam, and we have the what you gonna call it, something else. I can't remember. Um, all right, how's everybody doing? Hope you had a good weekend and a good week. We are now on week 8 and coming to the conclusion of this session and this class. So hopefully you've turned in all your work and everything's good to go. Um, your grades should be updated. The only thing that's probably not updated yet is your case study. I'll case study grades, and I'll get that in hopefully before the end of the weekend. Okay. Let's finish up strong. Okay. And this week, our final topics are sport facility and event management, and some legal issues in the sporting industry. Okay. So with that, let's get rolling with our presentation. Okay, so we've been talking about sports and activities, and more about the finances and then the people involved and that kind of thing, right? But at the end of the day, you also need a facility, right? You need a venue in which to have your activity, right? Have your sporting event or have your, event, whatever it is. Okay. And so each facility that is available, it has different purposes, right? There's different types of facilities, depending on, what the finances look like for the city or whoever owns a particular venue. Okay. And so, when we look at different types of facilities, you may have facility that's just made for one sport, right? Single sport, single purpose facility. You also have facilities that might be made for specialized events, right? But they're not single purpose facilities, right? Could be designed to host a variety of events and may not or may have roof walls or spectator seating areas, right? So we see open kind of type venues or standing room only venues, right, to certain concerts or certain halls or event spaces that you go to, right? You have stadiums like SoFi Stadium or Qualcomm or Snapdragon, excuse me, now that is more of a multi-purpose, stadium or arena, okay, where there's multiple things going on there. There's football, there's lacrosse, there's MLS, there's a variety of different sports being played and different activities going on. Petco Park is another example of a multi-use or multi-purpose venue, right? But you also have your single-purpose venues, right? Such as maybe I don't say a high school basketball gym or something like that, right? Its use is limited as far as venues go, but you can do multiple things in there, but it's really built either to play basketball or to play volleyball, right? It's one of those things when you have the court, and even then you have to make some adjustments, all right? But there's different types of facilities for different type of events, and depending on what your budget is, then you can kind of figure out, okay, what we need to do, right? Here's an example of the different types of sports facilities that are available, all right, that we're familiar with. Single purpose, Lambeau Field in Green Bay, Wisconsin is a good example for sure. A bowling alley, that's single purpose, right? You're not doing anything else in a bowling alley, right? You have a single purpose, a specialized ice arena, but most ice arenas nowadays, for the most part, are used in a multi-purpose way where they have the ice, but then they also put, they could put a wood parquet floor down for other events, right? Basketball, football, and a number of stadiums are like that, right? You have your multi-purpose, right? Like I said before, SoFi Stadium or Snapdragon Stadium, that's in San Diego. SoFi that's in Inglewood in LA. right? And you have your non-traditional type facilities, right? Skateboard park and that kind of thing, right? And those are, that's specifically made for, people that are skateboarding and doing tricks and or BMX biking or needing certain ramps and different obstacles in which to, traverse or that kind of thing, right? And so, when it comes down to it, there has to be a group of people that manage the facility, okay? People that, facilities managers, caretakers, custodians, just people that are taking care of the space, right? Who takes care of the keys? Who takes care of the cleaning, right? Who takes care of locking up and the security? Who, there's a lot of things that have to happen, right, as the facilities manager in conjunction and in coordination with the event itself, right? And so within that, you'll have the facility director, right? But you'll also have an operations manager, right? And an event director or coordinator. And they all kind of get together and they kind of map out the schedule for, okay, what are the events coming up? How many people do we expect? What type of event is it? Are we using the full capacity of the facility? Are we talking about, a certain amount of people? What are going to be our entry and exit points? Where are we going to have security? Where VIP is going to come in? So you have to be aware of all those things, right? What's going on that particular day of the event that people may need access to, right? Are there deliveries going on? Is there a special event? Just like this, the the NBA All-Star game is going this weekend, right? And so that facility, the Utah Jazz facility, the Vivint Stadium or Arena, right? The facilities manager there has a lot to do, right? Is all the equipment and everything that for each particular activity that's going on within the weekend, is it there on location, right? How do we get it in to the arena? Who needs access? When do they need access? Right? What areas are closed off to certain people? We have to clean, make sure everything is appropriately, sanitized. There's a lot that goes into it. Food stocking, all those things, right? So those people, particular people, they get together and make sure that we have everything in place and even down to the shot clock, the timekeepers, all those things, right? The ball boys, the people that are, maintaining the basketball court itself. They have to sweep it and clean it and make sure it's ready to go, right? All those are part of the facilities management team, okay? So when we get into the event management, every event is a product, right? Every event is a show. It's something that we're showcasing, which providing people entertainment, and so you want to make it the best possible experience for people, right? And it comes in different shapes, sizes, different approaches into how to present the situation, right? Present what's going on, right? And so, excuse me, event managing itself includes planning, coordinating, staging, and evaluating, okay? And so when you start looking at all those phases, right, there's a lot of, if you backtrack or reverse engineer sort of, right, you have to account for, a certain amount of time for your planning, right? Certain amount of time for your execution, your coordination and execution, as I say. And, depending on the event, if it's something that we've done before, or we haven't done before, or it's bigger this year, or smaller, whatever the case may be, right? You go through all the planning for those particular situations and make sure everything is in place, right? Some event management personnel include the executive director, the operations manager, security coordinator, public relations, marketing, hospitality division manager, right? So all those people, again, work together to make sure that the facility is ready to go. People that need access to certain areas, are, given that access. We know who's authorized and who's not authorized. And we understand that, the teams are going to be coming in this time and the players are going to be coming in this time and the staff is coming in this time and food is going to be delivered here. And there's a lot of moving parts, right? And so you have to make sure that we follow the steps when we talk about, event management, okay? First step, scheduling, all right? The next step is negotiation. Third step is coordinating. Fourth step is staging. Fifth step is cleanup. And sixth step is evaluating, okay? So some pre-event management tasks, right? Scheduling the event, negotiating the event, coordinating the event, right? You got to get the event on the books. That's the first thing, right? And so we have discussions with whoever, is trying to promote her or whatever group is trying to put the event on. They want to use the space. So we have to pick a date on the calendar that's free, that makes sense for everyone, and is, mutually beneficial to all the parties involved, right? We negotiate the terms of the event as far as, who or what amount of the gate is kept for the facilities owners or the venue owner, how much goes to, the people putting it on, how much goes to the athletes or the participants. And so there's a lot of different things that happen, right? There's a lot of making sure that certain contracts don't cross over or violate other contracts that people have, right? Other agreements or things that they have in place where they can't do certain things, right? They can't, they're Nike, they're part of the Nike team, right? And so they can't necessarily wear Reebok equipment or wear, Adidas equipment or something to that effect, right? So all those things go into play, the marketing of it all, what advertisements we're gonna have, what entertainment we're gonna have, right? All those things get negotiated, right? And then you have to coordinate the event, okay? Coordinating the event really is about the people that are in charge of the different things. They get together and create a timeline, right? A tentative or estimated timeline about how things are gonna go and who needs to talk to who, what do we need to bring in, what else do we need to tie a certain event up and make sure that it's good to go. Do we have everything in place for what needs to happen, right? So all the coordination happens, and that's all the pre-event stuff, okay? Now staging the event, totally different, right? So when you stage the event, you have to worry about security, customer service, all right? Making sure that that you do a risk assessment as far as the capacity people that are coming and that you don't exceed that capacity for the venue. Two, you have to make sure that are clearly marked egress and entry points. Okay, you have to make sure that the places that need to be secured are secured. Okay, you have to make sure that you frisk and you search people for anything that they shouldn't have, weapons, anything that could cause harm to anybody, people bringing in alcohol or things that they shouldn't be bringing in, they should be buying at the venue, or they just don't allow in the venue, right? Some venues cameras aren't allowed, so they'll that's part of the security's function, is to say, hey, you know what, there's no cameras allowed, so here's a bag, put your camera in here, lock it up, and you can use it after the venue, right? So there's a lot of things that go on with the security, right? Customer service, right? Being there to answer any questions that the participants have, okay? Making sure that all the fans and the spectators that are coming in, they know where to go. There's someone there to guide them as to where their seats are at or where a particular thing is going on, right? Food, and kind of lay the land and make sure that everybody understands, how to conduct themselves, where the restrooms, which we made your question, right? Making sure that people don't get too out of hand and, enjoy the event and, have some friendly and healthy competition, but making sure that, we don't have any, obscene or really vulgar people and people that are ready to fight and get into altercations because they're either, too intoxicated or they're just too riled up and too, kind of in the moment, right? Alcohol policies, right, have to be adhered to and have to be, displayed, not necessarily displayed, but there has to be an alcohol policy in which that whoever the security is or whoever is managing that understands that, if someone comes to the bar to get a beer or a drink, that they need to assess whether or not this person has had enough, okay? Because that is a major liability if you keep feeding people alcohol and they are at a point where they should not be consuming any more alcohol. You don't know how they got to the venue. You don't know, they may go out and drive home and then end up in an accident and changing a lot of people's lives. And so you have to make sure that the company, the venue, the promoters, the people putting the, everything on and managing are not liable and don't have exposure. Okay, crowd management is a big deal now. It's always been a big deal, but it's even a bigger deal in light of the Travis Scott, concert that happened, I guess a year or two ago, maybe a year ago, in which people died because the crowd management was just poorly done. There was a poor assessment of the grounds, of the fairgrounds done. And so there were too many people in the space. People got trampled because they were letting the crowds push up all the way to the stage, and there was no place else to go. And people ended up dying and losing their lives. And it was just a chaotic situation. There was no space for the ambulance to get in. People weren't really sure what was going on. And so all you're going to get is chaos and people really trying to make sure that they get out okay. But once you get kind of down, or you fall, or something happens at one of those events, you're probably not going to make it, just because the sheer numbers of folks that are at the event. You're going to suffocate. Things are going to happen. People are going to die, right? And we saw that at the Travis Scott concert, and there's other venues that's occurred before. And so it's really the responsibility of the promoter, it's responsibility of the security at the venue, it's responsibility of the facilities manager, the operations manager, to make sure that they don't exceed the capacity, and they do a real true assessment of how much space is available. And based on that, this is how many people we can allow into the venue, right? We need to give people in at least an area of at least a foot around, in a foot circle of space, to kind of be able to maneuver, right? Even if it's 6 inches, at least they have some space, but they can't be cramped up together, right? So crowd management is a big deal. Alcohol policies, again, going back to policy and training, all right? What's the policy, and are people trained, right? Are the people that are actually serving up the alcohol, are they ready to go? Do you understand the rules? Do you understand that, they see someone that's inebriated or intoxicated, they're not to give them any alcohol. If there's any problems or disturbances, they are to call security, and security will come and take care of and handle those issues for them, okay? Sales and marketing, when it comes to alcohol, you have your sponsors, and you have those guys that are out there, Anheuser-Busch, Coors Light, all these different sponsors, right? Jack Daniels, Hennessy, there's all these guys. When it comes to the sales and marketing, the alcohol companies have a big, play in this, okay? They have a big footprint in providing advertising, sales, and marketing dollars, right? And so you have to be careful about how much alcohol you promote, how much alcohol consumption you promote, and making sure that each of the sponsors, when it comes to alcohol, they have their, they're prominently displayed, but at the same time, they may have certain booths or certain ways they want their alcohol distributed, okay, or sold, right? They may have a standalone booth that way they just specifically is strictly for, let's just say Patron tequila. I've been to places where Patron is a sponsor, and Patron has a prominent, piece of, real estate or land that they are serving their alcohol from, right? And all the other alcohol brands kind of have smaller venues, or not as big, or not as central. And so, they get the, kind of to really be the showcase or the show for alcohol, and the main alcohol available. Okay. Then you're tailgating, of course, there's going to be alcohol consumed in tailgating, but, people have to, do that in moderation. And tailgating, it's a good time. You're enjoying food and drink and, hanging out with the people, but it's before the game. Okay. And so, and you don't want anybody tailgating and they're getting too drunk, and then they come into the arena, or try to come into the arena, and they're totally just too intoxicated. Okay. And so you have to kind of turn those people away, say, hey, it's time for you to go home, or go to your car, or sober up or something, right? And then you can come back and come in, right? So tailgating is a tradition that's been around forever. It's not going anywhere, but people tend to, consume a lot of alcohol at tailgating parties. The thing is it's everything in moderation, and just making sure that, we know people are tailgating, but we also have some kind of security presence that's, out there in the parking lot of the stadium or the venue, just to remind people like, hey, have a good time, but do it responsibly. Don't get into altercations. Don't abuse the alcohol. And most importantly, right, be professional and courteous to other people that are around you, and don't litter. Don't leave the place a mess. You come in, you tailgate, you have a good time, you clean up before you leave, you pack it up and put it in the trash or whatever the case may be. And then you go inside the stadium or the venue and you enjoy the sporting event and continue to have a good time. Okay. Again, alcohol policy detection and enforcement. So if you try to bring alcohol in and it's not allowed, being able to make sure that we can, identify that and resolve that issue by, taking the alcohol away. If the person wants to come in, they don't want to come in, they can keep the alcohol, but they can't come into the venue. They can't come in to see the sporting activities, so they have to stand outside. Okay. And so there's a lot of things when it comes to alcohol, because the tendency is that people will consume a lot of alcohol at sporting events because they're having a good time, right? But there has to be some responsibility and some accountability for how people do it, and it needs to be done, in a respectful and responsible manner. Okay. Your crowd management plan, you have to have, the right, staff and the training to make sure that they understand, what their requirements are, right? Emergency planning, right? How do we move people in and out of the space when it's, you know, thousands of people in there, tens of thousands of people in there? What is our emergency route? How does the ambulance get in? How do we get emergency services in and out? How do we, access people that are down, right? How do we protect the entertainers or the players from the spectators, right? And so there has to be a lot of emergency planning just to make sure that everybody is aware of how to get in and out of the spaces, and to make sure that everybody understands, this is supposed to be, a fun and a good time, but things may happen. And if they do, we have a plan. This is the emergency plan. And it may not be known to all the spectators, but it's imperative that the staff, the people that are managing the crowd, the security, that they are aware of the emergency plan, and they know what to do, when to do it, how to do it. Okay. One of the most important, not one of the more important things, right, is ensuring accessibility for people with disabilities, right? So, of course, now it's pretty seamless. It's not anything that special. There's certain areas that are made for people with disabilities, wheelchairs, old elderly folks, right? And so you have to have those things available based on ADA and those kind of rules, okay? Procedures for ejecting disruptive people. Again, there's certain rules, there's criteria for how do we decide when someone needs to be removed from their seat or from the venue, okay? We don't want disruptive people. We don't want people, getting into conflict. Friendly banter back and forth is all good, but has to be done within a certain limit and can't be taken personally, all right? So we all need to know, as far as, the staff and the people that are, working there and managing the crowd, what are our criteria for removing people and what's the procedures, okay? What do we need to do? How does this work? Do we go in teams of 3? Do we go in teams of 4? Is it just one person? Is it a warning and then the person, second time they continue, then they leave, right? Is it the first time and then do different behaviors, merit, an ejection or different, course of action, whatever the case may be, right? So depending on what the person did, okay? Efficient communication system can be understated, okay? I just can't say enough about having open lines of communication, communication that is accessible by all, with different varying channels, specific to what people are doing, right? And everybody can reach the people that they need to reach, right? In addition, communication system from the venue to the spectators, right? That's an important aspect also, because I need to be able to communicate with the people that are coming to the event, just in case something is happening and just for general information, okay? Just, such and such is now, coming, or there's certain people in the building, or, hey, for interaction purposes, you need to have a good communication system, right? And effective signage, again, goes without saying, right? I need to have everything kind of identifiable: where the bathrooms at, where are the food vendors, where are the drink vendors, where can I get apparel, where are the exits, where do I go in, where's the parking, right? Signage is important because it gives direction to people as to where they need to be based on the tickets they bought. It also helps, everyone within the team, the management team, to understand their roles, right, and what their area responsibilities are, right, and to understand, okay, this is the east wing, west wing, whatever, north side, north entrance is going to be used for certain things, south entrance is going to be used for that, right? Understanding those things, but those things need to be labeled and identifiable to everyone, right? Then you have your post-event tasks: event cleanup, settlement, right? We're talking about settlement. We're talking about making sure we pay all the bills, making sure we close out any open contracts, whether it be net 30, net 60, net 90, whatever the case may be. We make sure everything that is associated with the event is closed out, right? The facilities, the vendors are paid. They've taken all their merchandise and all their goods and wares. We've cleaned up, we've secured the building, we turned the security on, and we have roaming patrols and that kind of thing. We've taken care of everything. We tied a knot, and now we're going home, and the facilities manager is locking the door and calling it a day, right? But we've taken care of everything. Accounting has been diligent in making sure everything is good, and then we do a hot wash, or we evaluate the event, right? We look for the challenges that we had, the successes that we had, and we document those things so that next time we can do better, or we can continue to use those same tactics in order to have a successful event. Okay. All right. So now let's jump into some basis of law as it relates to, just in general. Okay. Now there's a governing body, and certain rules and laws for sports, right? But at the same time, our basic law, right, applies to everyone, right? Whether they're an athlete or not. Okay. It doesn't matter. But we have to make sure that we understand the laws and the legalities of a lot of things. Okay. So of course, we have laws, just, that's the rules and regulations that govern our behavior, right? And laws are different in every country, right? We have different judicial systems. Each country has different judicial systems. Each state has its own, federal statutes, state statutes, city, statutes, ordinances. There's a bunch of stuff, right? But that's all legislation or legislators, right? That's what, we have our congressmen for, our senators, right? To make sure that, we pass laws and amendments to the Constitution that make sense for our society, okay? So when it comes down to the courts interpret the statutes or rules and fill in any gaps left by legislatures, all right? So the court really, there's three branches of the government, right? There's judicial, there's the executive branch, and there's the legislative branch, okay? And so, of course, we have our judicial branch, which is the law, right? We have an executive branch, which is the president and, his group of people, and we have legislative, right, which is the congressmen and senators and what they do, okay? And so all those things kind of come together and help to govern our country in different countries, right? So when we talk about, the premise of law, right, we're talking about precedent, right? And precedent is basically, a ruling or I'm trying to think of a good definition of precedent. It's something that we've decided is a good response or recourse to a particular situation, right? And that we've made a decision about a certain legal situation, and that can now be applied when that legal situation occurs again, right? We can use it as a precedence. We can say, Roe v. Wade said this about, abortion. And so now, we have precedents, okay? And so if another case comes up that is similar to that, we just reference Roe v. Wade. This is the precedent, and we will use that to adjudicate the situation, the current situation, and look at the circumstances based on that. But we have some precedents. Okay. The laws, of course, affect everyone: sports managers, sporting events, sports organization. No one is exempt from the law. Okay, no one is above the law. So make sure you keep that in mind, right? And we have many instances of athletes that have broken the law, that have gone to prison. Just countless number of professional athletes and people that have done well in sports, or were once well-known figures who have gone to prison. Okay, O.J. Simpson, just to start there, right? Mike Tyson, right? You break the law, you got to pay the price. Okay, so some sources of law, excuse me. We got our Constitution. Okay, we have our statutes, we have administrative law and common law. Okay, so let me go back here. So our Constitution, of course, is our Constitution that was written up by our forefathers. It kind of lays out the Bill of Rights. So the first 10 amendments of the Constitution are the Bill of Rights. Okay, and so I encourage you to go check out the Constitution and see all the things that are legal, by law. All right, and your constitutional rights you are entitled to. Okay. Then we have statutes, right? And statutes are basically things, legislation that have been written in, and that they're not necessarily amendments, but they're rules, right? They're policy sort of that have been stamped and said, okay, you know what, this is something that we're going to use that's going to be permanent in nature, that is going to give us guidance and when we're dealing with a particular situation. All right. You have administrative law. Administrative law really deals with the executive branch and how that's governed, and making sure that they are doing the right thing. And if something comes up, we need to investigate. That's administrative law. Common law is more of what we're accustomed to, as far as judges, and lawyers, debating and coming up with decisions about certain cases, right? That's common law, right? Anything that's going to court and a judge is deciding based on either maybe a jury or just judge alone case, that's common law. Okay. Our American judicial system, right? We have federal, state, separate federal and state systems. Okay. And so the way it works, the state level, right? They adjudicate everything within the state, but sometimes things don't necessarily go the way certain people wanted to go. So then they may bump it up to the federal courts, right? And then within the federal courts, of course, we have different districts, okay, that handle certain areas, right? So there'll be court district that handles New York, Boston, Jersey, that area. Then there'll be another court district that handles federal district that handles the southern part of the United States. And then there'll be the western, northwest, southwest, central, America, that, and not Central America, but our central states, right? So we'll have those particular entities, right? But from there, we have also the appellate court, okay? And then we have the Supreme Court, okay? And so all those particular courts, they all, kind of make up, what, the rules that we live by, okay? Specifically the Supreme Court, right? They can set precedents, of course. They can set statutes, right? They handle really, really big, macro level topics or situations, right? Abortion, freedom of speech. It all depends on the level of the case and what it is that is being debated, or what the issue is at hand, right? And so the Supreme Court will step in and kind of figure out whether or not they want to hear certain cases, because it may set a precedence and may be used in the future. Okay. You got your U.S. Congress and your state legislature, like I said before, all right? So that's your representative or congressman, and then you got your senators, right? And then, of course, the federal and state court systems, okay, as I mentioned before. All right, so U.S. Constitution, you got supreme law in the United States, right? The Constitution is really the guiding or the at the core of all our laws, okay? Greatest source of individual rights as citizen consists of the preamble, articles, and amendments, right? The preamble is kind of like the preface, or kind of like the forward, right? It kind of explains what the Constitution is, why it was created, what some of its intents or some of its goals. It just kind of gives a kind of a narrative, and gives it some background and some reason as to why it's there, right? And purpose. Okay, you have the articles within the Constitution, then you have your amendments, right? And then the Constitution, it lays out the limits, and gives the government certain powers, right? It gives the government certain things they can and can't do, and it helps to really help. It helps to guide decisions at every level. Okay. Now you have your amendments, right? Like I said, the first 10 amendments of the Constitution or the Bill of Rights. Okay, and then after that, you have your other amendments that cover, different topics. And amendments, can be added or removed, right? But only if Congress and the Senate agree to that, right? It has to be something that goes to both bodies of our government, right? And then will be added or taken on, right? So that's why you hear there's always a fight about the amendments and freedom of speech, the right to bear arms, right to happiness, the pursuit of happiness, right? All those are all amendments, right? But those can be taken away or added or modified, but only through Congress and through the Senate. Okay, so those two bodies have to come to some consensus. Okay. All right. So federal legislation, all right, congressionally enacted legislation, statutory language, okay, does establish the application interpretation of a statute. Federal laws that affect sport, Title IX, and we got Title VII, all right? Okay, so again, Title IX is, gender discrimination as far as, allowing women to participate in sports and them having access to funds and that kind of thing, right? Title VII is more or less talking about, Civil Rights Act 1964, and not being discriminated based on, race, color, creed, religion, sexual orientation, that kind of thing, right? And so both those titles affect sports, right? So Title IX of the Education Amendments of 1972 precludes discrimination based on gender. There are three areas, right, that we look at: financial aid, benefits, and then participation opportunities. And so you can see that, since it's in its introduction, that we've had a huge change and focus on women's sports and how they access money and some of the things available to them, and some, just in general, just the opportunity that women can have to participate in sports. All right. So the effects on athletics, when we talk about DOE, Department of Education, and sexual violence guidelines, okay, just making sure that, again, how do we deal with certain things, when it comes down to, to sexual violence, especially sexual violence in sports or in general, okay? State legal systems, okay? Legislature of each state is responsible for enacting laws to govern citizens in matters where federal legislation is silent, right? And so what they're saying is that the state, will typically be able to take care of their own issues, right? And they look to the federal government, to the Constitution, and to statutes and amendments to, help them figure out what kind of rules they want to have for the state, okay? Now, when it comes down to the constitutional legalities, you can't be more strict than the Constitution, right? You could be a little less, but you can't be more, All right, and depending on the situation. What I mean by that is that if the Constitution says, or there's an amendment or a statute that says, hey, if you commit a crime, you get 5 years, right? The state can't come behind and say, well, we're going to give you, 6 years or 7 years, okay? Because that goes against the higher court or the higher, legislation, which is the federal legislation, right? The federal legislation is the guiding principle, is really the rudder steer, is really at the core of where states get their constitution and how they handle their court systems, all right? So when it comes down to the different areas of laws, all right, there's torts, there's negligence, and there's contracts, okay? When we talk about tort law, we're talking about civil wrongs or injuries, right? Negligence, excuse me, and there can be compensation and punitive damages when we talk about tort law. So really talking about when people, get into accidents or people, do things that cause harm to someone else. They didn't mean to do it. Maybe they did. Doesn't matter. Okay. It's either negligence, all right, or ineptitude. So either way, your tort law is there in order to provide some reprieve for those people that have suffered those things. Okay. You have your negligence, because failure to act as reasonably prudent person would have acted, right? So you have here is what we call the reasonable man approach. All right. If you as a person can see whatever happened as a reasonable response or reasonable behavior, then it's good to go, right? There's no laws been broken, there are no issues. But the reasonable man approach is what's used to understand, like, if something is amiss, right? If something should be punished, or someone should be punished for certain things they have done, right? Within negligence, it's up to the plaintiff to prove. The burden of proof is on the plaintiff, right? They should be able to prove duty, breach of duty, proximate cause of injury, right? When we talk about duty, they had a duty to do a certain thing, right? Duty for a certain responsibility. The breach of duty is just that. They did not fulfill those particular obligations, or they neglected their duty, right? Proximate cause is really related to the fact that whatever the event was that happened, it caused a particular adverse outcome, okay? And so we can say with some certainty that this had a direct impact on what happened, right? So that's proximate cause. And then injury, of course, is self-explanatory. Someone got injured, or this injury occurred, so that's negligence, excuse me. Such in the case of, maybe you don't remember this, McDonald's got sued by a person because the coffee was too hot, and there was really no notice or some warning to let the person know, hey, the contents of this cup may be extremely hot, use caution, right? And the person was injured or burned, and so that's injury. That goes to negligence because it was an ineptitude, but McDonald's failed to really think about what the impacts would be if someone got burnt by the coffees, okay? And then you have your defenses for negligence, okay? So types of intentional torts: invasion of privacy, defamation, assault, and battery, okay? Invasion of privacy, pretty straightforward, right? If someone violates someone's privacy, discloses information they shouldn't disclose, or, are, in their space or doing things that violates that person's right to privacy, then that's definitely an intentional tort. Defamation, that's saying things that aren't true about someone and defaming them, or ruining their reputation. You can also throw slander in there, sort of, right? So defamation, slander, no different, but kind of in same vein, right? Assault, of course, bodily harm, okay? And then we have battery, same thing, this physical, touching or causing physical harm to someone, okay? Contracts, again, agreement between parties to do or not to do a particular act. Contract law preserves and encourages the rights of parties to make or enter into agreements, all right? Different tenets of contract law. Of course, you have your offer, all right? Here's the contract. This is what I'm giving you, and this is what I expect in exchange, right? We agree to the contract, which is acceptance, okay? We say good to go. I like the terms, right? And then it's consideration. this is where we kind of come back and say, look, some things have changed. We need to kind of go back and check this out and rework the contract. Okay, let's renegotiate or restructure the contract. Okay, use of exculpatory agreements. Right. Again, there's waivers and releases. As you see this in the sports world all the time, people are waived off teams, they're released. Right, and there's a difference between the two. Waivers are one thing where the team or the may still have rights to the person, okay, and so they waive them, and they don't owe that person any money. Or if they're released, then they may owe that person money, but that person may still be contractually obligated to them in some form, shape, or fashion. Some future challenges, of course, that we have, office conduct and related policy issues, clear enforceable contractual agreements, okay, and concussion litigation is a growing concern, right? Again, that has to do with sport, with football, excuse me, and hockey, and basketball too, and certain sports, soccer, those sports that there's a possibility that someone can definitely get hurt, and so how do we handle those things? Okay. All right. So with that, that concludes this week's um, presentation, right? Pretty short, straight to the point. These two particular areas kind of you really, you get more out of it as you are more exposed to it and you learn on the go. Okay. Make sure you get your LE in on time. Make sure you get your final exam coordinated with the school since you're online students, and get that done and completed by Sunday so that I can have it graded and back to you. Okay. And again, if there's any questions, comments, concerns, please send me an email. Let's talk. If you have some issues or things that you're not really sure about as far as your grades and what's due, what's not due, I just want to make sure that everybody has what they needs, and ends the session on a strong note. Okay, I really really appreciate everyone, the participation in the class, the progressive improvement I saw over the 8 weeks, whether it be citing or just your approach to answering your LEs, your approach to just you taking your quizzes and your midterm and that kind of thing, right? I really enjoyed this class, and I wish that it could be in person, but I know many of you are student athletes, and you're trying to juggle many obligations, right? And so I commend you for completing the class, and just take what you can out of it, and hopefully you've learned a little something that will help you further your career, whether it be being a professional athlete at some point somewhere down the line, anywhere in the world, and then eventually transitioning into maybe an executive or administrative position, and just reflecting back on what you learned in this class to assist you in your job. All right, so with that, thank you, and I hope to see you soon.